How's it going, everyone? Welcome back to another video here on the Unknown Code YouTube channel. I'm Ethan, your favorite underqualified senior software engineer. I've got a problem that I'm sure many other people could relate to. In my household, I'm the primary person that cooks as well as finds new recipes to try out on a weekly basis. Generally, I enjoy finding new things to eat other than one massive problem, and that's the cooking blogs. If you've ever searched for recipes online, you know exactly what I'm talking about. As soon as you visit a cooking blog, you're bombarded with ads everywhere and one of the slowest loading web pages you've ever seen on the internet. Trying to find the recipe you came for is sometimes nearly impossible. You have to scroll through endless chapters of the author's life as well as those other ads and other pop-ups. And then once I finally find a recipe that seems like my family will enjoy after minutes of finding the webpage, my best option to save it for later is to either write it down somewhere I'll lose or add it to an overflowing bookmarks folder where it'll take me forever to find it whenever I want to cook it later. This is a problem that I want to solve. I want to build a no BS recipe / cooking application that people will actually want to use, including myself. I don't want any in-your-face ads, no long stories about the author's childhood, just recipes, how to prepare them, and a centralized place to store and index all my favorites. Has this been done before? Probably, but I think I can do it better, and I'm going to go ahead and bring you along for the ride. Now that we have set the backdrop of what my idea is and why I want to build this, let's get into how we're going to do this, including our tech stack. So this series would be less like Let's Build Twitter and more like the old HTML parser series from my channel, meaning it's going to be more of a show and tell style. I'm not going to go ahead and take you through every single line of the code base, but I do want to keep you updated on the progress of the project. As for the tech stack, I'm really breaking my mold a little bit here and going on the more modern approach to full stack development. I'm going to be using NextJS as the quote-unquote full stack aspect of our application, and this boils down to performance and to hosting. The amount of built-in optimizations that NextJS has is staggering, and we can also get even more performance out of it as long as we go ahead and architect the application properly. And then as for the hosting, Vercel has a very generous free hosting plan that I can take advantage of while the application is still in its infancy, but once we start getting charged by Vercel for site traffic, I plan to go ahead and upgrade the backend from NextJS to something more performant such as Go, and we'll also go ahead and host these different frontends and backends on things like AWS or somewhere else that might be cheaper. But that's going to be pretty far in the future, so we don't really need to worry about that for now. For styling, I'm also going to be stepping out of my comfort zone and trying out Tailwind CSS. I'm hoping that this will enable me to easily set up the application to be mobile responsive. The database will be PostgreSQL. This just because it's industry standard and because once again, Vercel has a pretty generous free hosting plan for hosting Postgres databases. And once again, if and when Vercel starts to charge us, we'll go ahead and start looking elsewhere to see if there's any cheaper options for hosting our database. But for now, we'll go ahead and keep everything on Vercel. So that leaves one final thing to worry about, which is the ORM. I went back and forth with what ORM I wanted to use for this project. A lot of people have mixed opinions about this topic, but I ended up deciding to go with Drizzle, which at this point I still need to learn, but it seems like this is a more modern approach compared to Prisma, and theoretically if it sucks, I hope to upgrade the backend eventually anyway. So there's our stack. We're gonna have NextJS with TypeScript and Tailwind CSS, and then also PostgreSQL and Drizzle ORM. I'm sure we'll also go ahead and sprinkle in some other dependencies here and there for things like authentication, but we'll go ahead and get to that bridge whenever we get there. Now with the tech stack out of the way, let's chat about how we're actually going to build this, my ideas, and then my general design philosophy for this application. First and foremost, the application is going to be designed mobile first. I typically cook with the recipe open on my older iPad, so the application must be designed to view the recipes easily on smaller screens. On top of this, I want the site to load quickly and not put a massive strain on whatever device I'm using. You have no idea how many other times cooking sites have completely drained my iPad battery while trying to prep and cook for only like 45 minutes. Finally, I want the UI to be simple and not cluttered with ads. This is another massive downfall of cooking blogs that I hope to avoid with the premium setup that we're going to be talking about a little bit later on. We may still need to sneak in a single ad per recipe just to keep the lights on, so to speak, but I want to design the application in a way that the ad will load last and not be any hot zones where the user may accidentally click on it. Now, what features do I want this application to have? So at its bare bones, the application will need to have three main functions. First, it needs to allow the users to search and index recipes across the site. Secondly, it needs to allow the users to save their favorite recipes in a digital cookbook and then come back to them later. We'll also probably want this cookbook to be indexable and searchable as well. And finally, we want to allow users to create their own recipes on the site and save them to a personal cookbook. I want to nail these three features in a simple yet elegant way that keeps users coming back and adding to the cooking content on the site. And then on top of this, I have tons of other ideas and features for the site, but for now, I think I want to go ahead and keep those to myself and reveal them as we continue on and focus on our MVP. So I think that's everything for the baseline out of the way. Let's go and hop into the computer and start setting up our project and try to get somewhere today. Let's go ahead and get this project started off right by creating a new new GitHub repository. I'm going to be making this on my personal GitHub. We're going to go ahead and just call this cooking app. This is going to be private. I'm not that concerned about the README, and I'm not going to add a description or anything like that. And like I said, just going to go ahead and create the repository. And then let's go ahead and hop into our terminal and start building our next project. So in the terminal, let's go ahead and cd into my code directory, and let's go ahead and mkdir, and let's go ahead and make a cooking app directory, and let's go ahead and cd into cooking app. Let's go and clear that just to make it a little bit cleaner. Let's go ahead and say npx create next app at latest. I'm gonna go ahead and put dot, and we're gonna go ahead and name it cooking app. We'll go ahead and enter. Gonna ask if we want to use TypeScript. Yes. Do we want to use ESLint? Yes. Do we want to use Tailwind CSS? Yes. Do we want to use a source directory? Yes. And do we want to use app router? Yes. And then do we want a default import? No. So it's going to go ahead and set everything up for us. Now that everything's set up, we're going to say vim dot open this up. We're going to our source app and then page.tsx. And this is where we have all of the default stuff. Let's go ahead and get rid of all the default. And we'll go ahead and just put like cooking app or something here. So let's go ahead and delete this. Go ahead and add a div. And then we'll go ahead and just say like cooking app or something like that. And let's go and also format that because I like using 4 spaces. And then inside the global CSS, we're going to get rid of everything other than the Tailwind utilities. That's fine. Go ahead and save that, and that should be good to go. We can go ahead and say npm run a dev. This is going to go ahead and start up a local dev server. And we can go ahead and go over to localhost 3000 and see that our application's working. So we can see at localhost 3000 that we have our cooking app. Everything's good to go. So let's go ahead and get this pushed up on the GitHub now. And now we're going to go ahead and say git init. We have initialized an empty git repository. Let's go ahead and get add dot to go ahead and add all those changes. Go ahead and git commit -m, and we'll go ahead and call it initial commit. And then we still need to go ahead and say git config and then -- global and user.email. I'm gonna go ahead and blur this out, but I'm gonna go ahead and put my email. Okay, and we'll say git config, and then we don't want this to be -- global, I guess. This should have just been git config. Oh well, it is what it is. Git config user.name, and then I can go ahead and put my username. That's fine. Let's go ahead and git commit again because it didn't allow us. Git commit initial commit. Now this is where things get a little bit hairy because I have multiple Git accounts, so I need to make sure I actually do this properly, otherwise it's going to break everything. We're going to go ahead and try git remote set -url origin, and this is going to be origin, and then git at github.com - my username colon my username, and then / cooking -app .git. Now, fingers crossed this actually works. I've had some troubles with this in the past, so hopefully it works. No such remote origin. Terrific. We might have to do the add actually. So let's go ahead and try git remote add origin. Okay, let's go ahead and say git remote add origin. Okay, it seems like it actually worked, and it's important that I do the dash part because I need to use my SSH key. And now I'm going to go ahead and say git branch -m main like that, and then git push -u origin main, and fingers crossed it asks for my SSH key. Terrific. And there we go. Set up a new branch. Everything's good. Let's go ahead and refresh and make sure this is working over on GitHub. Now we can see there is a little bit of a getting started here. That is fine. We have our initial commit. And now while we're at it, we might as well go ahead and set up the other branches that I'm going to use. I'm going to use kind of like a pseudo git flow branching strategy where we're going to have develop, where it kind of has some like developmental code, and we're also going to have main where all of the working code is, and then we'll have any feature related code. And then if we have to do any hot fixes, we'll just make a hot fix off that branch. So if you don't know what git flow is, that's more or less all it is. It's just a way to go ahead and keep your code organized and make sure we have a working branch and main basically all the time, or working code and main all the time. So let's go and go back into our terminal here and set up a couple branches. Now we can go ahead and say git checkout -b, and we're going to go ahead and call this develop. Probably just make a dummy commit, honestly. So we can go into vim dot, we'll have to do git add again, but let's go into source, just go ahead and say dummy push for develop, like so. Go ahead and save that. Now we can go ahead and git add dot to this branch, git commit -m, and we'll say setting, whoops, let's go ahead and make this setting up develop branch. Gonna ask us to do git push upstream. That's fine. And now that we have everything set up, we should just be able to hit this, hit enter, put in our passkey like so, as long as I don't scuff it. Cool. So now we have new branch develop. And then whenever we develop a new feature, we'll say git checkout -b, and then whatever the feature is, and then we'll PR it in. Obviously, I'm going to be reviewing my own PRs, but I just want to go ahead and break up our code. Cool, so that's everything set up here. So now I'm going to go ahead and take a look at what I need to do to get everything all set up with Vercel and try to get like a little bit of a CI/CD pipeline so that whenever we PR into our main, we'll go ahead and build out the application and we can go ahead and see everything. I went ahead and signed up for Vercel, and now I went ahead and went to my GitHub and grabbed the cooking app. Let's go ahead and import it. We have our cooking app. The root directory is going to be // that's fine. Here we are going to go ahead and set up some environment variables. We need to go ahead and set this up a little bit later on. This is going to be after I set up the Postgres and everything. I guess it wants this to deploy to go ahead and make it a project. So we'll go ahead and hit deploy here and let it do its thing. This is going to be free until we start getting a lot of traction to the site, which I don't see it, happening for a while. So I'm going to go ahead and let it do its thing here. Then I'll be right back whenever it's completed. Cool. It looks like it is finished. Let's go ahead and continue to our dashboard here, get rid of that, and now we should see that we have our cooking app, and it looks like the cooking app is cooking app-mu.vercel.app, and the deployment is this. I'm going to go ahead and look into some domains. This isn't going to be the official domain, but if we go ahead and click on this, let's see if it actually opens it up. You can see we have it. Pretty sweet. And then if we click on this one, I'm guessing it'll do the same thing. Well, maybe not. This one is just, I guess, the project itself, some analytics, some stuff like that, and we can go ahead and visit. So this is the actual one, cooking dash whatever. Let me do a little bit of research on how to get this set up with GitHub Actions to build and publish anytime we push the main. I'll be back with y'all. After spending a little bit of time researching, I found the official documentation from Vercel about how to set up GitHub Actions to exactly what I wanted to do. This is also when I found that Vercel has an automatic staging area. They call it preview. So I went ahead and went forward with the main being the staging/preview area and releases being the production code. So to do this, I went ahead and created a new branch called release. And then after filming this episode, I was sure to head over to GitHub and set release to be the default branch, which makes it the default branch to base PRs and commits from. I made a dummy commit to the release branch to push it to the remote repository so that I could start on the pipeline. To set up the pipeline, I switched over to the develop branch, and to use GitHub Actions, you must create a .github/workflows directory, and inside you can create YAML files with action setups. I started out with creating a single pipeline file called preview.yaml because the documentation was a little bit confusing, but later on we went through and created another YAML file for our production build. We start out with the name of the action, which we call Vercel preview deployment. Then we set up the action to read in 2 secrets that we'll store on the GitHub repository called Vercel org ID and Vercel project ID. Then we set up what branch we should watch for pushes to run the action. Since this is the preview, we want to watch for pushes to main and build the code in main. Next up, we describe what we want our pipeline to do. We give our job a name and tell GitHub to run it on the latest version of Ubuntu, and we lay out each step of the pipeline. First, we check out the latest changes. Secondly, we make sure the latest version of Vercel is installed on the virtual machine. Thirdly, we get any important environment variables and project settings from Vercel. And then next, we build the project out to send to Vercel. And then finally, we send the built out project artifacts to Vercel to be deployed and run the pipeline cleanup. I also noticed here that our on push was incorrect, so I went ahead and changed it to be branches to be correct. Next, for the production pipeline, it's almost exactly the same setup. We do change the action to be ran on pushes to the release branch instead of the main branch, and then there are a couple small changes in the steps that I ran, including in the step where we pull the Vercel environment information. Here we want to fetch the production information rather than the preview information. When we build the project artifacts, we now tell Vercel to make the artifacts production optimized. And finally, when we deploy the artifacts, we specify that we are deploying to the production environment rather than the preview environment. After realizing that we can split these into 2 different YAML files, I went ahead and created a deploy.yaml and pasted in the GitHub action steps for deploying to production in its own file. The next steps were to install the Vercel CLI locally and link the local project to the project that's on Vercel. When you do this, it generates 2 of the secrets that we need to store in the GitHub action secrets. I easily got the Vercel CLI installed. However, when I went to log in for the next step, I found out that for some reason, Vercel linked to my project to my old work email account rather than my personal account, and I had to recreate the project on Vercel and start all over again under the correct email. After fixing the account and project mishap, I was able to log into Vercel from the command line and link my local project to the Vercel project to generate the secrets that we needed to save in GitHub. I added these 3 secrets from Vercel we needed for our GitHub actions, and we were theoretically ready to try out our new pipeline. The first attempts to push in the main were not very successful. We pushed our changes on the develop branch of the GitHub and created a PR from the develop domain. And upon running the action, our second step to pull the project environment variables from Vercel failed. I went back through and tried to relink the project, as well as double checking that the pipeline steps was set up properly and nothing was mistyped. It seemed like the real issue was that I typoed one of the secrets inside of GitHub. So I also went through and double checked all of the secrets and then tried another PR. This time everything went through successfully and the pipeline code is ready to go into release to trigger the production builds whenever we push to the release branch. So next up was a PR and merge into the release branch to test out that pipeline. As we can see, this process also runs and passes successfully, and if we went on to Vercel dashboard, we can see that both our preview build and our production builds are updated. The next thing I needed to do for my preferred pipeline was to stop Vercel from deploying the application when any of the branches are pushed to. We specifically wanted to only build production on release merges and preview whenever main is merged to. To accomplish this, we went into our Vercel dashboard and unlinked our GitHub repository from the project, and this allows us to use only the GitHub actions to deploy the application whenever we want to, and now we can follow the Git flow branching strategy that I talked about earlier. To test everything out, we made one final PR from develop to main with a small change, and we can see it automatically deploy only to the preview environment, and we make the same change from main to release. We can see that only the production environment will change, and we can see the changes are hosted on the web page exactly how we expect. And that's all we have time for in this episode. Hope you guys did enjoy, and if you did make it to this point, please make sure to leave a like, comment, subscribe. Everything helps here on the YouTube algorithm. I just wanted to mention, I don't know how often these videos are going to come out. I'm just going to go ahead and make them as I go, and then whenever I have videos to upload, I'll go ahead and upload them. If you are new here, I would highly recommend you guys checking out my Let's Build Twitter series. I'm building an entire Twitter clone from start to finish using Spring Boot, PostgreSQL, and React.js, primarily basically from scratch. And then before the next episode starts, I'm also going to go ahead and try to get a little bit of a GitHub board going. That way I can just kind of keep track of what I need to do next and keep track of everything else. I'm also going to go ahead and think about what I want to go ahead and do for a application name. If you guys have suggestions, you can go ahead and leave them down below as well. But with that being said, hope you all enjoyed. This has been Ethan the Coder. See you guys in the next video.